Every video and episode of the It's Cavalier podcast is made possible by my supporters over on Patreon. If you enjoy the show here today, consider signing up. You'll get early access, exclusive videos, podcasts, member shoutouts, and more. And as always, thank you for watching. Well, there you have it. The Cleveland Cavaliers will be taking on the Indiana Pacers in round 2. I think we all expected this outcome. I was hoping that the Milwaukee Bucks would at the very least be able to extend that series one more game, and they appeared to be on their way to doing so. It was a back and forth affair right up until the end. Man, I'm just sitting there. I am watching Gary Trent Jr., a player that I have disliked ever since he scratched Darius Garland's cornea out. And I'm like, man, this dude is cooking. He was lighting up the Indiana Pacers at one point. He went 12 of 25. He drilled 8 triples on 17 attempts. That is 47.1%. He scored 33 points, a game high. He even outscored Giannis himself. But the man sold. He choked. So I don't know if I've ever seen a team, and I'm not even going to say a team. I don't know if I've ever seen a player put on that type of performance and choke it all away. Like, I mean, that was a collapse of epic proportions. And if you are Gary Trent Jr., oh man, it's going to be a long offseason. And that moment is just going to play and live rent-free in his mind for a very, very long time. And with what happened to Damian Lillard in this series, with the torn Achilles and the future of Giannis kind of up in the air at this point, because we don't know. He's still under contract, but he could force his way out of Milwaukee if he wanted to. He has no real obligation to stay there past his contractual obligations, but there's a lot of uncertainty. There was a lot of uncertainty with the Bucks, and tonight, the way that it ended, it probably did not feel good if you are Giannis, who himself dropped 30, and he's had to carry, right? Without Dame out there, he has had to kind of put back on, the hard hat and try and carry his team home. And he would finish with 30 points, 13 assists, 20 rebounds. I mean, this is an unbelievable stat line. 30 points, 20 rebounds, 13 assists, 2 steals, 2 blocks. He did turn the ball over 7 times, but you know what? When you just are shouldering that much of an offensive load in 45 minutes or so of action, how can you blame the guy? Seriously. He is the number one option. He is getting the bulk of the defense's attention. You see the paint is being collapsed every single time that he drives in there, which is resulting in a lot of kickouts and whatnot. And for these guys just to not be able to pick him up and support him the way that he needs, clearly it sucks. I mean, Gary Trent Jr. was on his way to doing that, but Kevin Porter Jr. had a couple of boneheaded decisions himself. You got to get the ball. What the fuck was that, by the way, Kevin Porter Jr., and not getting Giannis the last touch on the last possession of the game? I just don't understand that. That was a terrible choice within his own. That was terrible shot selection, terrible decision making, just terrible all the way around from Kevin Porter Jr. But Gary Trent Jr. Was the one that ended up turning this ball game. Oh, he just gave it away. He gave it away. He choked it. It was just a horrendous end to the game. But we're not here to necessarily talk about that. It is Cleveland Cavaliers, Indiana Pacers in round 2. A matchup, honestly, that is probably going to be a lot more competitive and could be a lot more intriguing than the Miami Heat series was. I mean, these are two teams that they absolutely took care of business in round 1. Cleveland with the sweep of the Heat, and the Pacers with the gentleman sweep of the Milwaukee Bucks. Both they ended their series without relatively breaking too much of a sweat, they should have relatively fresh legs, and they're on a collision course, one that has felt like it has been months in the making. And this, my friends, shaping up again to be one of the most intriguing matchups of the second round. Just a lot of big names on both sides. We already know what Cleveland has done this season. They entered the postseason as one of the most dominant and efficient teams in NBA history and have carried that into the playoffs. They are first in points at 126 per game through the first round. They are first in three-point percentage, completing an absurd 44% of their triples. They are tops in plus minus at a collective 22.3 per contest. And perhaps most eye-popping of all, they hold a mind-numbing offensive rating of 136.2 per game per NBA.com. And by the way, StatMuse, they listed entirely different, slightly higher, 137.4, which just so happens to be the highest offensive rating in NBA history with a minimum of 4 games played. They're doing shit that we have just frankly never seen before. They are so efficient, it is not even funny. And again, this is the number one rated offense in basketball. But Indiana is no slouch themselves. They finished the regular season as one of the 10 best offenses in the league, ranking ninth in offensive rating at 115.4. They can put up points in a hurry. And that's exactly what they have done through 5 games in the first round. And this is two high octane offenses at the end of the day. That is what we're going to be watching, and 2 defenses that can get the job done as well. And that to me is what makes this matchup so damn interesting, because the second round is when things truly begin to unfold and you get to find out what your team is made of. Both teams obviously have their strengths that they can lean on. Both have weaknesses that they can exploit at times. And I cannot wait to drop my series preview for this one, because Indiana, we already know what they did to Cleveland during the course of the regular season, right? They won 3 out of the 4 matchups. Now, if you want to take the last matchup of the season in which Cleveland had nothing to play for, and they played the C team, basically all the guys who are never getting regular minutes, whether it be Luke Travers, Chumo Keke, you got Amani, just the two ways and some of the deeper reserves. That is who they played, and they still put up a competitive fight in a game that went to double overtime, if I'm not mistaken. And while they ultimately lost, you can't really put too much eggs in that basket. You can't really judge that loss too much, because there wasn't a lot that Cleveland was playing for. If just to give guys play time, that's basically what it was. So really, at the end of the day, you had 1 Cleveland win and 2 Indiana Pacers wins. So the Cavaliers essentially lost 2 games, as far as I'm concerned. They lost 2 games. Indiana won one. Indiana won those games at the end of the day. And the big factor in that, we already know what everybody's going to be talking about. It's a full court press. It's their ability to put pressure on your ball handlers. It's their ability to knock down that mid-range shot. There are a lot of different things that they do well. And that, from a stylistic standpoint, should match up very, very well with what Cleveland does. And so this should be an intriguing one. This should certainly be an intriguing matchup. And in my opinion, I have to look at the totality of what the Indiana Pacers have done this season and judge them accordingly, right? They're not just Tyrese Halliburton. They're not operating with the same type of offensive efficiency as they did last year, but they're still a damn good team. They move the ball. That is what makes them such a challenging opponent. They led the NBA in passes this season. It just such a ridiculous part of what they do over there is ball movement. And in order for Cleveland to overcome them, they're going to have to overcome some of that ball movement, which is going to be a difficult task. It really is a difficult challenge to ask. Prior to tonight's matchup with the Milwaukee Bucks, they came into game 5 averaging 31.5 assists per game, which is 5.7 more than the next closest team, which just so happens to be our Cleveland Cavaliers. They move the ball well. And in order to contain that, the Cavaliers are going to have to dig deep into their bag of defensive strategies to try and figure out how they can stymie that ball movement. I know some of that might begin with trying to force the ball out of Halliburton's hands, maybe go with a half court press. I don't think they're going to steal a page out of Indy's playbook and go full court press, but maybe they go half court press and try to pressure the ball handlers a little bit more. And in regards to Halliburton and McConnell and Siakam and Nimhart, there are a lot of guys over there that are really, really good with the ball in their hands. And so they're going to have to figure out a way to try and stymie some of that ball movement. And so I don't think any one defensive strategy is going to work. I think we're going to see some man-to-man. I think we're going to see some zone. And I think we're going to see some press coverage out there, maybe a combination defense. And it's up to Kenny Atkinson, obviously, to adjust to what is needed at the time. But this is a difficult challenge. It presents a much different challenge than the Miami Heat. It truly does, because Miami, they were respectable shooters and they shot very, very efficiently, mind you, in the 4-game series that Cleveland just finished them off in. But Indiana is a very, very good mid-range team, and they can knock down that three-point shot. They were second to the Cleveland Cavaliers in three-point percentage in the playoffs, 40%. They've been even better during the postseason with that three-point shot, that perimeter shot. And so, truth be told, it's going to be a difficult challenge. One that I think the Cavaliers ultimately end up winning. I'm not going to mince words with that, but it is going to represent a much more difficult challenge than Miami Heat did. They have a lot of pieces over there that can make life difficult. They have length to them. The full court press has been an irritating strategy for the Cavaliers to have to overcome in the past, and it has worked for Indiana to varying degrees depending upon the matchups. And granted, some of this was before the Cavaliers acquired DeAndre Hunter. His addition will help. But at the end of the day, Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell, Ty Jerome, they're going to have to overcome that full court press. We saw them do that, and they've been doing it all season long, but we just saw them do that in that game 5 versus the Bucks. They made life difficult for them the entire possession from the inbounds pass. Getting the inbounds pass is going to be critical. It's going to be of high importance in each and every one of these games, as Indiana knows what works and what doesn't work against Cleveland. So it's going to be up to Cleveland to adjust. It's going to be up to Cleveland to figure out how they can move the ball down the court in an effective fashion, in a timely manner, and to get guys into good position. And I can't wait to watch it play out, because there are some big names on both sides, whether that be Tyrese Halliburton, Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, Pascal Siakam, Evan Mobley, Jared Allen, Miles Turner, DeAndre Hunter, Ty Jerome. It just goes on, man. It truly just goes on. And so I cannot wait to watch this play out, especially after seeing what Cleveland did from a historical context against the Heat. Truly, to me, this should be a good one. This should be a good one. I think that Indiana has seen what they can do to beat specific teams with their physicality, with that press, with their length on the wings. And truth be told, Cleveland's going to have to overcome it, man. They truly will. I don't know, man. I really don't know how long this series will go. I think maybe 5 to 6 games. I do not believe it'll be a sweep on either end. Of course, I don't believe Indiana will sweep, but I also don't believe that that Cleveland will either. I think this is going to be a longer series. And the truth be told, I was really hoping that, again, Milwaukee would have extended it one more time, because I don't think Darius Garland is going to be healthy enough to suit up in game 1 of this series. He might, who knows? But I would have preferred it went one game longer to give him a little bit longer to rest. So we'll have to see how this whole thing plays out. But even if DG can't suit up in game 1, I still feel pretty confident about Cleveland's chances of taking home a victory from the jump. But they're going to have to be on their shit, man. They truly do. Or they truly will, because Indiana is not going to let up with that press. Donovan, Ty, whoever else they will be having bring the ball up the floor, they're going to have to make decisive passes. They're going to have to be very, very judicious with the basketball. And I think you saw that even against the Bucks tonight. You saw there were specific possessions where they could not even get the ball inbounded, right? Where it resulted in a lot of timeouts that, frankly, that can put you in a position where you have no choice but to make a bad decision. So we'll have to see, man. We'll have to see, but I have confidence. Cleveland is so good at what they do. They're very, very balanced and versatile offense. They have defense and defenders for days. So I'm not truly worried about the Pacers as much as I'm worried about like the Thunder or Boston or anybody else out there like that. But they do represent another tough challenge. And mind you, the first round series against Miami, that was a good matchup for them to get because Eric Spoelstra is one of the best coaches in NBA history. He is well regarded for his in-game adjustments and his ability to get the most out of his rosters where let's just face it, there's a talent deficit a lot of times in some of the matchups that he has. But despite that, he always has his teams competing, and at least for the first two games in that Miami series, Spoelstra did have those guys ready to play. And that's why you saw them kind of come back at points in game two and whatnot and put up somewhat of a competitive fight. But at the end of the day, they just did not have what it took to overcome the massive talent deficit between the two teams. Now, the Pacers, they don't suffer from that problem. Yes, collectively, Cleveland is the more talented team from an individual, if you want to go roster, player by player down the roster, but they are still a very deep team, right? When you're talking about the starting five that they could throw out there and the reserves. And to me, the matchup between TJ McConnell and Ty Jerome is probably going to be one that I'm keeping my eye on. I know Pascal Siakam versus Evan Mobley in that front court, that's definitely going to be another one to keep an eye on. But TJ McConnell's minutes versus Ty Jerome's minutes, that should be a good one. Why? Because TJ McConnell is still one of the most pesky, most irritating defenders in the league at his position, despite being undersized. He's really, really irritating out there. He's still one of the better pound for pound point guard defenders. He is a terrific pickpocket. It really, really gives you hell in the passing lanes, and Cavaliers are no strangers to that. They know the damage that this man can do in the passing lanes. I think TJ McConnell, doesn't he hold a record against Cleveland for doing that? It was like 9 or 10 steals that he had against Cleveland at some point. I can't remember what year it was, but this man was just stealing everything that that came his way in one of these Cleveland matchups. So yeah, Ty Jerome versus TJ McConnell, that should be a very interesting battle. The reserves in general, right? Watching players like DeAndre Hunter and how his minutes coincide with what Indiana decides to do out there. Because again, for some of the matchups that Cleveland faced against Indiana, they did not have DeAndre Hunter on the roster. So I'm very, very interested to see what type of role he plays during the course of a 7-game series against these guys. Should definitely be a good one. I think they'll be mentally prepared. I think they're going to be well rested, obviously, sans Darius Garland, who may or may not play in game one, but this should be another good matchup. And again, we don't want to fall victim to getting the easy opponent, the easy path all the time. I was a big proponent of getting Orlando in the first round. Now I'm glad we didn't get them. But at the end of the day, when you are tested like this, right? Because there's the old saying, right? Iron sharpens iron, a biblical reference, if you will. But I believe that is the case. These teams, these opponents that the Cavaliers are facing can only make them stronger as a collective. Yes, there's always the chance for injury before you even get to the Eastern Conference Finals and beyond, but getting the pressure that will be thrown their way against a team like the Pacers, I think that's a good step, right? That is a good next challenge to keep them locked in and focused on the goal that is at hand, and that is winning a championship. So that's where we're at, right? I can't wait to preview the series in its entirety, and I'll probably be dropping that no later than Thursday. But man, this has been a hell of a postseason. I just did not expect the Bucks to go out the way that they did tonight. That was a hell of a way to blow that lead. Just a hell of a way to choke that game away. I still can't believe what I watched. I don't think I've ever seen anything like that. And with that being said, let's hop into the chat. Dr. Claus 77 says Booty Fingers Trent sold. He certainly did. I was just in the chat with Claw talking about how Gary Trent Jr. was cooking. And it just feels like sometimes when things like this occur, it's uncanny. You're just waiting for something to go wrong. And that's exactly what happened. After cooking, after drilling 8 triples in this one down the stretch, he gave the game away essentially. They had it, man. They had the ball. They had gotten it to Trent, and he just let it slip through his fingers, man. That's got to be a terrible feeling as a player. It truly does. That's one of those things that's going to be a lasting memory. It's going to leave a lasting impression on Gary Trent Jr. John Bontia says, "Why was Giannis so upset?" I mean, wouldn't you be upset too? I mean, I certainly would after going out like that. Brilliant Damage says, "My God, the Bucks are trash." I think losing Dame obviously hurts. I don't think they're trash, but I do definitely believe that they lost a very, very winnable game. Indiana obviously did what they could to give this one away. Yeah, they fought back into it. They were down big in the first quarter and they had to overcome a deficit. But at the end of the day, Milwaukee still put themselves in a position to close this game out, to win it. And then you had a streak, you had a stretch rather of ill-timed shots. So the selection was poor, the decision making was bad. I think I already referenced the Kevin Porter Jr. insistence to pull up for the mid-range shot. Just a terrible decision by him instead of getting the ball back to Giannis. And I get the entire defense's attention is on Giannis. They're paying attention to him. They're going to collapse and build that wall around him anytime he receives that ball. If he's out on the perimeter, 9 times out of 10, they're going to let Giannis have that shot. As we all know, Giannis is not necessarily a good he's not a great, not even a good 3-point shooter. He came into tonight shooting just 22.2% this season, not necessarily in postseason, but 22.2% from 3-point distance on the regular season. So they're going to give him that 3-point shot. And so when that happens, yeah, he's going to look to move the ball to somebody else. But you got to give it back to him on the last possession of the regular, of the 4 quarters. Prior to overtime hitting, you got to get the ball back to Giannis. Let him see if he can make something happen. And while ultimately he did get the ball back with a chance to close things out, I still can't believe that was the case. I truly still cannot believe that game ended the way that it did. Bow down before you searched. Trigger says Bucks with an epic choke job. That's exactly what happened, man. B Scroll says, yeah, the Cavs definitely got their work cut out for them. This Indiana team is fast as hell, but I still have the Cavs in 6. Hopefully, Giannis 5. Giannis is gone. Yeah, I do believe that the Cavaliers will win this series, to be quite frank, but I do think that it will go at the very least 5 to 6 games. I don't see it going 7, but I do think Indiana puts up a very, very good fight. And from a stylistic standpoint, the Cavaliers have some things to figure out. If they can overcome the full court press, if they can overcome that mid-range dominance that Indiana has been known for this postseason, I think they'll be fine. Deca Farm says, let's go. I'm right there with you. JGH Reloaded says, I don't know how the Bucks blew that. I'm right there with you, man. I truly don't know either. Jose says, to be fair, in the third matchup, the Stars didn't play and they were losing to Ty Jerome until Coach sat him in the fourth. Yeah, they should have won that game too, that third game. So, I mean, even if you want to look at it, that truthfully, Indiana only won 1, Cleveland won 1. The things that you saw in that loss, I encourage you guys, if you haven't watched that game in a while, I think it was January 10th, maybe January 12th, go back and watch that game because it'll tell you everything you need to know about why the Cavaliers lost. There was some carelessness with the basketball. The full court press made it difficult for Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell, Evan Mobley to overcome getting the ball up the court. And Cleveland, as long as they can do that, I think they'll be okay. LeSmooch says, I feel this is another tie in Hunter series. It certainly could be, but time will tell. This Indiana Pacers team, they're peaking at the right time. John Batia says, we can just trade Garland, keep Jerome. No, thank you. LeSmooch says, both teams haven't actually played each other fully healthy this season. I think that's a good point. Tune In says, I'll say this, Cavs to the Eastern Conference Finals. I think so too. I think that clearly Indiana's not going to be a cakewalk. Let's just put that out there. Let's keep it 100, right? they're not going to be a cakewalk, but it's still a team that I feel that Cleveland is equipped to defeat. There are a couple of things, couple of key factors in this that I will outline in my series preview, but at the top of the line is that full court press and defending that mid-range shot. That will be another huge one. But yeah, I can't wait to see this one play out. John Balin says, I can really see Cavs in 4. They are playing on another planet right now, extremely focused on a mission, totally selfless. And the scary part is that this roster is locked up for 3 to 4 years. Now, obviously, the core and a couple of the other when we think of the core, we think of Darius, Donovan, Evan, and Jarrett, obviously. But there are a number of other key reserves that are under contract as well. You still have Max under contract. Isaac is under contract. And you have a couple of others. But you also have some decisions to make on the likes of Ty Jerome. I think Sam Merrill is up for some potential deal. There's just some decisions to be made. I don't even think Dean Wade. I need to check some of the contractual obligations for this team, but I do believe that they have more. They have about 2 or 3 real decisions to make in regards to contracts, with Ty Jerome being at the forefront of that, right? Dean Wade's under contract for one more season at about $6.6 million, but they have a really, really tough. They're in a tough position with Ty Jerome, obviously, and it's all really going to boil down to what Ty is willing to accept on this contract. I'm of the mindset that Ty is very, very likely to sign a short-term deal, and if the Cavaliers end up winning the championship this season, it's not like a lot of other teams can line up to offer him money this upcoming offseason. But if he signs like a 1-and-1 or a 2-year deal with the mindset of being, okay, I'm going to cash in a year or 2 from now, I certainly could not blame him, because this is likely to be his last big opportunity to get a big time payday. He is not that young. I don't know if people realize that, but Ty Jerome is not a young dude. He's 27 years old. He'll be 28 by the time next season starts. And we know that the NBA prime, where the prime for an NBA player is right around that age. And with Ty's injury history, he missed all but 2 games last year. And I get it. It can be a fluke type of thing. But again, we have seen guys get injured right in contract years or right before they're supposed to be paid, i.e. Isaiah Thomas. It's a tale as old as time. But at the end of the day, I certainly could not blame Ty Jerome if he signed a short-term deal with the intention to get paid, 1 to 2 years down the line. But as long as we get a championship during that time frame, I'm okay, man. I truly am. I truly am. Rob Cunningham says Evan's salary bump will hurt the cap in 2025-26. Yeah, I mean, winning defensive player of the year guarantees that he is going to get that full bump. But I think this is the thing that I think a lot of people forgot. He was likely to get that anyway, because he was very likely to be named to either the first or second team All NBA. I think Evan will. And that, just like Defensive Player of the Year, would have made him eligible for that full amount. So I think this has just been a terrific. I was going to say terrible. Sheesh. This has been a terrific season for Evan Mobley. He got named to his first All-Star team. He's very, very likely to be named to an All-NBA team. He is going to be named to the first team All-Defense. He's been named Defensive Player of the Year, and he could cap things off with a title. This has been a terrific season for Evan Mobley. Just crazy, man. But it just goes to show how deep this roster is, and these are first world problems, right? Rich people problems. But if Dan Gilbert and company have shown anything, is that there is a willingness to spend, and this is a ready-made title contender. And so I don't think they're going to really I don't think they're really going to not consider paying what they need in terms of the repeater tax when the time comes. Tune in says, I don't see it going 7, either 6 the most. Yeah, I think so. I think 6 is probably the most the series goes. I'm not going to rule anything on. I just don't think that 7 games will end up being what it takes to dispatch the Pacers. Yeah, but I'm not going to disrespect them. Tune in says, overrated Doc Rivers. Doc Rivers is always. I think we need to have a conversation about Doc Rivers. I'm not prepared to have it today, but Doc is such an overrated coach at this point in his career. Truly. Mr. King 562 says we could easily sweep Indy. I don't think so, man. I think that is it's very unwise to believe that the Cavaliers will enter this series and just beat the hell out of Indiana like they were able to Miami. This Indiana team legitimately is in a different tier than Miami was. They will give Cleveland a legitimate run for their money. Will they win the series? No. Cleveland will emerge victorious, but I do not believe they're going to be dispatched in 4 games. They just, for what they do, especially that full court press, it's not going to be as easy to overcome as some may believe it to be. I can't buy into that. J47 says, cool, cry about it while he's here the next 4 years. I don't know. I'm guessing that's in regards to one of the comments in the chat. Floyd Phillips II says Pacers will be fortunate to get 5 games. I think I honestly believe that I, I do believe that the Pacers end up winning 2 games in this series. I'll give them 2. I think five feels on the lower end. I don't think it's going to be a sweep. I think Indiana is definitely good enough to win 2 games in this series. But again, I could be wrong. I mean, I too did not believe that Miami was going to end up being swept, but they did. I thought they were going to put up a more competitive fight, but we'll see, man. We shall definitely see. That's where I'm at. Thrice Great says this series will end up like Miami. Take care of home, then win both in Indy. Surprisingly easy. Again, I don't think it will. I know a lot of people here seem supremely confident, and I don't want you guys to take this the wrong way. I am confident in Cleveland's ability to win this series. I just, when you get to the second round, though, things are a little bit more difficult. And let's keep it a buck here. Indiana was not in the play-in tournament. They were not in the play-in tournament. Miami had to scratch and claw to make the playoffs. They were in a legitimate position to have their season ended even before the playoff bracket was the dust was settled on the initial 6 seeds. So yeah, I think we have to kind of give Indiana a little more credit than we're giving them here. They, again, for what they do from a physicality standpoint, from a full court press, from the mid-range shot, the 3-point shooting, they can mirror a lot of what Cleveland does. I don't think they're good enough to defeat Cleveland, but I think we got to give them a little bit more credit. I think we've gotten to a point where we're exuding confidence, but we're disrespecting these other teams. I'm just not there. I'm not there. I think that Indiana is going to represent a more of a unique challenge than more people believe. Floyd also says Matt giving too much credit. They can't shoot. Couldn't even beat Jerome and Hunter. They were about to lose to the Cavs. Floyd, that was one game. Go take a look at what Indiana has done in the playoffs. I encourage you. Throw the regular season out the window. Throw the regular season out the window and take a look right now in real time at what Indiana has managed to do in the playoffs through these 4 or 5 games that they've had with the Milwaukee Bucks. And it has been nothing short of efficient. Seriously, I don't know how anybody can look at what they have done this postseason and say they can't shoot. They are literally shooting 39.3% from 3-point range. That is second to only Cleveland's 44. And yes, Cleveland has shot extremely well. That will go down a little bit. It'll probably dip 2 to 3 points. Probably dip 2 to 3 points because this is not the Miami Heat. And again, the volume is there. It's not like they're not taking the shots. They attempted 36.6 triples in that series. That is 7th among the playoff field of 16. To shoot basically 40%, I think that kind of tells you everything you need to know. They can shoot from 3-point range, and they are the number one team in basketball right now in terms of the in terms of that mid-range shot. You got to look at the zones. So yeah, they definitely are better than you give them credit for. Floyd Phillips also says they almost lost tonight. Bucks didn't even have a number 2 or a point guard. Does that mean that they are not capable of winning? They literally just gentlemen swept them. I mean, you guys just got to give them a little more credit. Jay Quest says Indy put up 130 plus, but I think the Cavs have been keeping the number 1 defense a secret all season. Yeah, I mean, the defense, they've clamped down. But again, there is a big difference There is a big difference between Miami and Indiana. I need people to realize that. They just cakewalked Miami because Miami won. They're coming in off the play-in tournament. They barely made it in. And while they may not typically be your normal eighth seed being coached by Eric Spoelstra and company, there is a clear gap between the Indiana Pacers and the Miami Heat. I think you guys know that. I just think that the confidence is just it's just exuding, right? I mean, I understand that. I get it. Cavaliers in 6, in my opinion. 5 to 6 games. We'll see. The real McCoy says it is, but there's a difference between the Cavs and the Pacers. There is. And that's why I say 6 games. 5 games is probably the lowest that I'll get. To me, I think that's where until I see 2 games in this series, that's where I'm at. Until I see Cleveland go out there and absolutely pummel Indiana, and they have not really done that this year. All of these games have been competitive. And they should have won that third matchup again, but they sat the starters. But there's a contrast between the regular season and the playoffs, and we all know that. So until we see 1 to 2 games in this series play out, I think you kind of have to give Indiana their just due. They've been very, very effective. They've been the second most effective team from an offensive perspective in the Eastern Conference in the postseason so far, but we'll see. D. Jackson says, if the Cavaliers lose, why would they? I'm not following. Maybe that's something else in the chat. The real McCoy says 6 too high. Kenny aiming, pointing, and shooting, and we got the defensive player of the year. I don't think it is, man. I think that you guys are sleeping on Indiana. They are not in the same realm as a lot of these other teams that you're seeing. They just dispatched Milwaukee rather easily. I think that Detroit and New York, who knows what the hell, who knows what the hell it was cooking in that series, but it was a very, very physical series outright. But man, I look at what Indiana has been capable of doing. And as of recording this right now, New York and Detroit are tied at 81 to decide whether or not there will be a game 6 or not. But the only other team in the Eastern Conference that will give Cleveland fits is the Boston Celtics. I think every other team, I mean, they never really had a shot. Indiana, from purely a stylistic standpoint, I think that you got to be real. You got to be realistic here. They are not necessarily as bad as a lot of people think they will be. I think that's where I'm at. 2 games. I think they're capable of winning 2 games. Does that mean they will? No, but I think 2 games is fair. I think we just got to give them their respect. Thrice Gray says, I think the Indiana series will be more like the close series with Detroit from a few years ago, a close competitive sweep. Yeah, I think at the end of the day, I think Cleveland is going to be the victor. But I think what's often lost sometimes from game to game is the score, or should I say the win or loss, right? The win or loss that is put in the stat sheet at the end of the day is not always indicative of how competitive a series was, right? Each and every game is a battle in its own right come the playoffs, and there are a lot of different things that can occur. So I do believe that Cleveland is going to get a competitive battle from these Pacers, but they will emerge. I think that is what we are going to see. Talking to Growing Media says this series between the Cavs and Pacers will be one of the best series of the second round. I think it will be too. I truly believe that they're going to end up giving the Cavaliers a much different challenge than what Miami posed. I mean, Tyler Hero and all the bulletin board material that was flying around left and right, it just it gave Cleveland, extra ammunition that they did not even really need. But from an efficiency standpoint, from an offensive standpoint, from a ball movement standpoint, they do a lot of things differently than what Miami did. And honestly, they do a lot of things differently than what many other teams in the playoffs end up doing. Again, they led the league in passes this year. They're leading the playoff field in passes. They move the ball. They're leading the league in assists At the very least, they're leading the postseason in assists. So we shall see what ends up happening between these two teams. But I think ultimately, at the end of the day, they end up winning and no more than 6 games. And the Cavaliers will end up playing whoever comes out of that other end of the bracket in the Eastern Conference Finals. But we'll see, man. The Cavaliers and the Pacers will play. They will begin battle May, I think May the 3rd, May the 4th. I think that's the time frame right now between May. Let's just say it could be between the 3rd and the 6th. So about a week, maybe a little bit less than a week and a half, or a little bit less than half a week, but we'll see. We shall see what ends up happening. D Jackson says, when is the first game? I think I literally just answered that. Yeah, anywhere between the 3rd and the 5th is when this series will start. Talking to Grubbin says, D Jackson, times haven't been announced yet. Probably we'll get that tomorrow or Thursday. Yeah, again, anytime between May 3rd and May 5th or 6th, I think is when this second round series is slated to begin. Floyd Phillips II says, Mac, what happened in Cavs' last full roster matchup with Indy? Again, I don't know how many times I have to say this. Throw what you saw in the regular season matchups, throw them away. The regular season matchups do not mean shit come the postseason. You know this, Floyd. Everybody in this chat knows this. We cannot sit here and think about what this team did against that team, because you could just as easily, if you're Indiana, say, oh, what happened when Cleveland got basically pressed into oblivion using that full court press? Those matchups in the context of the situation, they don't matter. You got to throw it away. This is basically this is a mini season. Contextually, it's different, right? Contextually, it's different. We did not have DeAndre Hunter. Things look different. But at the end of the day, they don't ultimately matter, because I can gloat all the live long day that Cleveland and Boston, they had their competitive battles. But one thing is for certain. One of these two teams is tested. The other is not so much. So what I'm saying at the end of the day, the regular season at this point, it does not mean shit. This is an entirely different element that the Cavaliers are in. They came through with flying colors in round 1. But round 2, you got to just admit to yourself, this is not the same. The regular season does not matter right now. The postseason is a different type of game. We all know this. I don't know why we're acting like we don't, but we do. That's it at the end of the day. He also says, when Cavs dust these guys, everyone will say we knew it would happen. We all know that Cleveland is going to win this series, but I do not believe it's going to be as simple as some of you guys in here believe it to be. Now, if it is, feel free, come back. I enjoy the conversation. Come back in here, let me have it. That's what I'm here for. I love talking to you guys, but I think we got to respect our opponents a little bit more than we are. JD says coaching will be big in this matchup. Yeah, Rick Carlisle versus Kenny Atkinson should be a very good one. We all know Rick is a very, very experienced coach. Kenny Atkinson just emerged victorious, got the first sweep of his career. We know the experience that he gained under Steve Kerr and company over in Golden State. But yeah, this should be a good one. In-game adjustments will be critical in this one. Now, if I'm not mistaken, Indiana did not start with the full court press in all of their matchups against Cleveland. They went to that. They adjusted in-game, and it gave Cleveland fits. They could not overcome it. And then I think it was January 12th. I think that's the date. I think that was the first or second matchup between the two. The Cleveland Cavaliers turned the ball over 9 times in the second half alone. And a huge portion of that was the full court press. It was the physicality of Andrew Nembhard. It was Pascal Siakam picking up Evan Mobley when he's trying to bring the ball up the court, stealing the ball away from it. It was screens being set in very, very odd positions. Yeah. It's just, there are things that they can throw at you that could legitimately, in game, if you do not adjust to it, could become difficult. We shall see. We shall see. Jaron says, catching part of that whole series. Yeah, I'm not afraid of the Pacers at all. Cavs in 5. Am I afraid of the Pacers? No, but I do think they are, as a collective, good enough to win 6 games. So I'm in that 5 to 6 range. I don't think it'll go any more than 6 games, but I don't think it'll be a sweep either. Truly. John Bontia says Indiana has scrappy, hardworking players way better than he, and that's all I'm saying. I think we're downplaying the massive gap between the Miami Heat and the Indiana Pacers. Obviously, there's a gargantuan gap between Cleveland and Miami, but the gap between Cleveland and Indy is not necessarily as large as the gap between Cleveland and Miami. So it's going to be competitive. In the second round is when you kind of find some of these things out. So I'm very, very much looking forward to it. I got a series preview dropping with the X factors and the keys to the game and all that extra shit. But man, this should be a good one. I'm still racking my brain trying to figure out how Milwaukee just gave that game away. That was just crazy. That was absolutely crazy to me. Absolutely crazy to me that they were able to just throw it away. That series should have went 6 games. Should have won at least 6 games. So we'll see, man. We shall see. As always, tell you guys, if you'd like to reach out to me, you know how you can. It's Cavalier_pod at Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and more. If you want to be added to this Cavalier Discord chat, you know what to do. Leave a rating, leave a review, send a screenshot, send a review to it's Cavalier53@gmail.com, and I will send you said invite. If you want to support the pod in a small but helpful way, consider becoming a member over on Patreon. The link to that will be in the description. You can do so for as little as $1 a month. That's as cheap as it is, man. I can't wait for this series. I truly can. I really, truly think that we are in for something special from the Cavaliers. I think this is the year that the stars are aligning, and man, it's all they got to do is just take it one game at a time. They won 4. They've won 4. They got 12 more to go. Just need 12 more victories, and they will be the 2025 NBA champions. Go Cavs.